Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Electric Vehicles 101. Thank you for joining us on this Thursday morning. Just a few things before we start. This webinar will be recorded, so I will send it out to everybody after the presentation. I will also send out the slides, and if you have any questions, I recommend that you put them in the question box, and I have built-in time to talk through questions throughout the presentation. Let's see if there's anything else. You are on mute for the duration of this presentation. So again, put anything in the question box if you need anything answered. If your question does not get answered, you can always follow up with me in the follow-up email after this presentation. And just a quick show of hands. Can everyone see my screen okay? Just respond like, yes, it looks perfect. Give me some, reassurance if it looks good for you. Okay, I got yes, so I'm thinking it looks great. Okay, here we go. Thank you so much. Okay, so before I go on to talk about why EVs are great and all that other good stuff, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about us. So we are green energy consumers. We are a local nonprofit in Boston and Providence, whose mission it is to harness the power of energy consumers to speed the transition to a low carbon future. We do this in a myriad of different ways, both by our programmatic work, but also by our work in policy and advocacy. For programs, for example, our Drive Green program, which is all about electric vehicles, is here to help. We started the program in late 2016 as a way to both help people get cars at discounted prices and then to educate people about electric vehicles before they make that jump to actually purchasing or leasing a car. One caveat on that is that we don't offer discounts at the moment for the cars advertised in our network because of inventory stocks are just so low that it's hard for dealers to actually have lower prices to offer on the market right now. So that's something to keep in mind. But we have sold over 900 cars through the program since its inception. So we're really, really proud of that. And my name is Devin Delibero. I am the Electric Vehicle Program Coordinator here at Green Energy Consumers for the Drive Green team. So if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me after this presentation. So why electric vehicles? Why are they so great? So one reason is the amount of CO2 emissions that electric vehicles actually emit. Gas-powered vehicles emit. So your typical gas-powered car in New England emits 381 grams of CO2 emissions per mile. That's a lot of emissions. Plug-in hybrids, on the other hand, that is a car with an electric plug but a gas backup, typically emit 176 grams of CO2 emissions per mile, so that is heading in the right direction. And then battery electric vehicles emit even less at 96 grams of CO2 emissions per mile. So you can see that there is a real impact here on climate change and just the particulate matter in the air. Okay, and this is a shameless plug for our green powered program. So if you want to check out our website after this presentation and check out the green powered program, basically you'll see why you can get a car that runs on no emissions. So transportation amounts to a big amount of emissions in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island. It's one of the highest contributing factors to emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. In Massachusetts alone, it's 42% of the greenhouse gas emissions, and then in Rhode Island, it's very similar at 36%. When thinking about electric vehicles, not only do they impact the environment at large, but also your public health. So because electric vehicles have no or less tailpipe emissions in the case of plug-in hybrids, that's less particulate matter being emitted to the air and less of that stuff that you're breathing in and potentially causing health problems. It is cleaner even if you take electricity generation into account. So you see a lot of people who aren't into EVs saying stuff like, oh, well, how is the car powered? It's by fossil fuels, right? Well, that's not necessarily the case because, especially in New England, the electricity mix is getting greener and greener every year. Both Massachusetts and Rhode Island have something called renewable energy standards. Now, they're a little bit different for both states, but basically there's more and more renewable energies coming online into the utility mix every year. So the mix is getting greener and greener. And then climate change itself is a public health threat. So we've all seen like the fires in Australia that have happened and everywhere else. Like that is why we want people to switch to electric vehicles. And then electrification can save New England $2.2 billion in avoided health costs by 2050, according to the American Lung Association. So, like I alluded to before, tailpipe emissions they lead to like a lot of respiratory illnesses. So, if you have less gas-powered cars, you have less health costs associated with those. And then efficiency. So gas-powered cars convert only about 17 to 21% of the available energy in gasoline into motion. That means they are super inefficient and you're just kind of like throwing your money away. Electric vehicles, on the other hand, are closer to about 60 to 77%. And you can see that demonstrated here on the graph on the right-hand side. So you'll see we have cars like the Jeep Wrangler, the Ford F-150, the Toyota RAV4. Their miles per gallon, or MPG, is relatively low as you move along the rest of the chart. So you'll see that even the Toyota Prius hybrid gets a lot better than the traditional, like just gasoline-powered cars. But the Toyota Prius hybrid doesn't actually have any electricity. It's just a different way of channeling the gasoline into the car, or using the gasoline into the car. I'm not a mechanic. And then you have the plug-in hybrid cars, which are, they have electric range and then a gas backup, so that gets even better and better. The Toyota Prius Prime has like over 180 mpge, which is just insane. And then you move even further along the graph and you'll see cars like the Tesla Model 3, the Hyundai Kona, the Chevy Bolt, and they consistently have higher mpges than the traditional gas-powered cars, and that is just fantastic. Okay. And they also have lower fuel costs. So we have done some math, and you can check it out on our website if you want to kind of just suss it out. But the average New England driver will save 5.7 cents per mile, which is equivalent to $678 a year, or $56.50 a month. And that's also considering how high New England electricity prices are, because they are much higher than the rest of the country, which I didn't know before I started working here. But it is still cheaper to run your car on a mile of electricity than it is on gasoline. I have this image here on the right-hand side from the Department of Energy. They do this thing called an e-gallon. And this was taken back in January when the regular gasoline average price was $2.74 in Massachusetts, where comparatively the electric e-gallon was $1.96. So you see that there are considerable like fuel savings there. And just to really hammer that point home, but with the lower fuel costs, I just look at this graph right here. So in a typical year, your electric vehicles, that's a battery electric vehicle with no gas backup, will cost you about $500 to $850 to fuel up. Plug-in hybrid vehicles, it's a little bit more because you do have that gas tank to consider in a small electric range. So that's anywhere from $600 to $2,400. The hybrid electric vehicles, which do not have a plug, is $700 to $3,250, and then you'll see gasoline vehicles is quite a bit more, with almost $5,000. So it does save you and fuel costs. And you can actually find a lot of charging stations that are public that are free, which I will talk about how to find those a little bit later in the presentation. And then EVs cut maintenance and repair costs in half. So generally speaking, you don't have to get your EV maintained very often. You might want to like rotate your tires and just check like the windshield wiping fluid, but that's kind of it. There are far fewer moving parts in an electric vehicle compared to an internal combustion engine vehicle because they don't have things like oil to refill or like timing belts and things like that. Though you do want to keep in mind if you decide to get a plug-in hybrid vehicle, you still have to service it like a gasoline, just a purely gasoline powered car because it does have all those extra moving parts. And it is unlikely that you'll ever have to replace the battery. You get a lot of folks that are really concerned about the longevity of a battery. Basically, the manufacturers are very confident in their technology, and the batteries are usually warranted. I think it's like 8 years, 100,000 miles. So they do expect it to last a long time. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. And they really are made, again, to last the lifetime of the vehicle. And then another thing that's really cool is that you shouldn't really have to replace the brakes very often at all, like far less frequently than you would a traditional gas-powered car. So there's this thing called regenerative braking, or it's also called one-pedal driving. That's how some people refer to it too, where you take your foot off the accelerator and the car slows down much more than it would in a regular gas-powered car when you take your foot off the accelerator. So it almost acts like a brake, and it really protects your brakes. And you can, once you get accustomed to it, and there's like different levels of how it slows down your car, once you get accustomed to it, you can kind of use it instead of using the brake pedal all the time. Now, it won't just like stop your car automatically. It's a slower process. So you still do need that brake for those emergency situations. But generally speaking, it cuts down a lot less on the wear and tear of your car, which is great. And oh yeah, another really great thing about that is if you're going down, like if you're on a road trip and say you're going down a lot of hills and you use one pedal driving or regenerative braking, it actually then puts all that energy back into your battery. So it kind of adds a little bit to the range of your vehicle, which is really, really beneficial. And if you don't believe us, and if you just need a little bit of extra reassurance, Consumer Reports came out with this electric vehicle ownership costs back in October of 2020 that I really suggest that you take a look at. It kind of it was very exciting for us because it backed up all the things that we've been saying for years, but it's from Consumer Reports, who is very reputable. So I would encourage you to check that out. Oops, excuse me. And like I said before, this kind of just shows you more of like the lesser moving parts that you have in electric vehicles. So you see where it says BEV right here on the right-hand side, that has like the lowest maintenance costs associated with it because it's just a pure electric vehicle, whereas a plug-in hybrid has almost on par with the hybrid electric vehicle, which is the car that doesn't have a plug. And I won't sit here and in kind of detail and talk about all the different parts, but just as a general picture, you can see how it is cheaper and there are less moving parts in a battery electric vehicle than there are to your traditional internal combustion engine vehicle or ICE vehicle. And then EVs save big on ownership costs. So if you look here on the left-hand side, the lifetime savings from EVs versus their best-selling internal combustion engine counterparts. Again, this graph is from Consumer Reports. So you can see for the RAV4 Prime, for example, which is a plug-in hybrid, so it has an electric range of about 40 miles and then a gas backup. So for the total cost of, let's see, so about for the so for the lifetime savings of a similar car, you're actually saving $4,300. The Model 3 is even better at $17,600. and the Model Y is about $13,400. So you can see that you do save total cost of ownership. Plus, EVs are really, really fun to drive. These are some pictures of our EV owners who volunteer for us and like to send in their pictures of their cool cars. I really like that they drive super fast because it's fun to have the acceleration. I think there's a false stereotype out there that electric cars aren't very fast, and they actually are really fast and in general just fun to drive. Okay, so I'm going to stop here to see if there are any questions. Any questions so far? Okay. I'm going to take that as I answered all of your questions beautifully during the presentation so far. So let's keep going. Okay, so here are some things you should know about electric vehicles. If you are considering an electric vehicle, you might have heard the term range anxiety. And for those of you who don't know, range anxiety is just the fear that you won't get where you need to go on the range that your electric vehicle has because it's not long enough, or there's not enough infrastructure, or whatever your reason may be. But we like to say that that is a thing of the past. And one reason I say that is because electric vehicles are coming out with greater and greater ranges on them every year. So you'll see like there's cars like the Kia Niro, the Hyundai Kona, the Chevy Bolt. Those all have upwards of 250 miles of range per charge. And then you go even further to like the Teslas, where they have like 300 to 400 range per charge. But again, you don't just have to have a Tesla. There are more and more vehicles coming out every year that have greater ranges. So if you really want that 300 mark, it is possible. And then if you're not ready for a battery electric vehicle, so for a pure electric vehicle, and you're like, you just kind of want to dip your toes in the water, so to speak, you can still get a plug-in hybrid, which again has that electric range with the gas backup. So you can kind of learn what the electric vehicle life is about and still like have that peace of mind of being able to go to the gas station if you need to. And so those cars are fantastic, and there's plenty of those on option. You can get a used Chevy Volt, for example. The Toyota RAV4 Prime is a very, very hot car right now. And of course, the Toyota Prius Prime. Those are all really, really great options. And then another reason why we say range anxiety is a thing of the past is because infrastructure is constantly being built, and it's much better than it was even just like last year or a couple of years ago. Especially with things like the infrastructure bill that was just passed in Congress, and all the different utilities have their own programs to install public charging stations. It really is not as bad as you would think. There's tons of infrastructure and more coming online all the time. And I'll talk about how to find that in a sec. Okay, and charging isn't hard, so don't be intimidated. So we're just going to go over the basics right now. There are 3 basic levels of charging. There's level 1, level 2, and level 3, or what it's usually called, DC fast charging. So level 1 is your typical wall outlet, what you charge your phone with. It gives you 110 volts, and that gives you approximately 2 to 6 miles of range per hour. It's also called the trickle charge because it does charge your core relatively slowly, but if you're like leaving it overnight, or you charge like at work or at night, like it's really not too big of a deal. And I know plenty of EV owners who do charge that way. And then you could do level 2. So level 2 charging is 220 volts. That's between 11 to 25 miles of range per hour. So that's quite a bit better than the 2 to 6. What I will say about that is that you can find those both publicly, and you can have those installed at your home. The cost for that is usually about $1,000 between like the electrician's work and the unit itself, but that will depend upon your actual personal situation. So I'm not going to go too much into detail there. But it's basically, if you want to get it installed at home, it's basically the same thing as like, you know, like a dryer or washer outlet. So it's not it's something that the electricians can very easily do. And then there's DC fast charging. This is not something you can get installed at your home. It's just too energy intensive. And they come at all different wattages or wattages. So they can charge your car a lot quicker. So for example, they can charge a Bolt, which is what we use here, and for like 90 miles in about 30 minutes. But again, it depends upon like the output of the DC fast charging station and then what your car can actually take. So just keep that in mind. Also, DC fast charging is not always standard in all electric vehicle and any electric vehicle. So you want to make sure that the car you're buying, if you want DC fast charging, it comes equipped with DC fast charging. It is not something that can be installed after the fact. It has to be something that comes with the car, like from the factory. And plug-in hybrids don't usually have fast charging capabilities because the idea is that if you run out of a charge, you just go and get gas. Okay, now there's some different plug types. So level 1 and level 2, you'll see on the right-hand side, they do the J1772, so the plug looks like that. And then DC fast charging is where it gets a little tricky. DC fast charging is either done through the J1772 combo, or you'll also see it written as CCS, or CHAdeMO. Now the J1772 combo is typically used on the American and European markets more commonly. And so all of the cars manufactured by American and European companies typically use that outlet, that charger. But a lot of Asian manufactured cars use something called CHAdeMO, so you'll see that on the bottom right. But now, in order to appeal to the American markets and the European markets, they're actually starting to switch over to the J1772 combo plug. So for example, the Nissan Leaf, which is manufactured by an Asian company, has the CHAdeMO charge, but their plug. But the new Nissan Ariya is actually going to be DC fast charge with a J1772 combo. And there's more and more Asian manufacturers starting to switch to the J1772 combo when they're actually selling cars in America or in Europe. I'm sure you have plenty of questions about Tesla and what their chargers look like, but they have their own proprietary report, and so I will leave that to you if you want to check out what they look like on their website. Okay. So most EV drivers do charge at home. So we did come up with a charging at home guide if you're ever interested. Like I said before, you can definitely just plug into a level 1 outlet, so your regular outlet, or you can choose to get something installed by an electrician to get a level 2 charging station at your home. Either way, it is really up to you and what you feel most comfortable with, but I would urge you to check out this charging guide. One thing I will say that I learned more recently is if you install a level 2 charger at your home, look into its NEMA rating. That's NEMA. You want it to have a NEMA rating of 3 or 4, because 3 means the unit is weather resistant, but 4 means the unit is very, very durable. And I don't think you'll have a problem if you have the unit installed on the outside of your home at all. And then you can charge on the go. So I alluded to before the fact that there are ways to charge on the go. There are different apps that you can use called PlugShare, ChargePoint, a Better Route Planner, and so on and so forth. So these were actually taken screenshots from PlugShare. PlugShare is a crowdsourced website where it'll tell you things like, does it cost anything to use this station, and is it in a well-lit area, is it broken ever, is there a line to use it, that sort of thing. It'll also tell you what type of station it is. So is it level 1, is it level 2 or DC fast charging? So DC fast charging here is indicated by the orange dots, and the green are level 2. So you'll see in Western Massachusetts, there's some big gaps, which is not great, but in Eastern Massachusetts, it's pretty populated with charging stations. And then Southeastern Mass and the Cape, you'll see in And then in Rhode Island, you'll see we have a lot in the eastern part of the state, but the western part of the state is a little bit of a desert. What I will recommend is that you check out these apps before you get your electric vehicle, if charging on the go or charging at home is not an option, just so you can see what's around you. And if you're ever on a road trip, I've heard from tons of EV owners that they use a better route planner, which really helps to plan out your route when you're going on long distances. And there's a lot of cool features in that, so I would urge you to check it out. We get a ton of questions about how to charging in apartments. So we made a guide for property managers if they're interested in learning more about installing EV charging for tenants. If you're interested, you can also check it out on our website. And again, I will send all of us around. But it's something that not only is good for property managers, but if you're looking for points to hit on with property managers, I would suggest reading the guide for some pointers. Okay, and now let's talk about money. So there are purchase and lease incentives that are available, so I'll just talk about those quickly. There is a federal tax credit, and it is up to $7,500, but that is dependent upon the battery size of the vehicle. So if you have a car like the Hyundai Kona, it has about 250 or more miles of range. That's a pretty big battery, so it is actually eligible for the full $7,500. But then if you have a car like a plug-in hybrid, like the Prius Prime, it has a much smaller battery because it only has a range of about 26 miles. So that's only eligible for about $4,500 for a tax rebate, sorry, a tax credit. Another thing that I cannot stress enough is that money is dependent upon your personal tax liability. So if you don't have that liability, they're not going to give you that money. And then another restriction on this is that the manufacturer only has 200,000 units before this tax credit starts to phase out. So Chevy and Tesla have sold upwards of 200,000 units. So a few years ago, actually now, the tax credit phased out for them. So they don't have a tax credit available for their customers anymore. Something to look out for in Congress is, I believe it's the Build Back Better bill. We're still keeping an eye on it, but it would take the tax credit and actually make it into more of a rebate. And it has the potential of letting customers get a rebate of up to $12,500. So we're keeping our eye on it. I'm trying to keep my fingers crossed, but something to consider. So if you are a Rhode Islander like me, there is no state rebate, and I don't think there are any plans to have one anytime soon. If you are a lucky Massachusetts person, there is a state More EV rebate. So I would encourage you to check out the More EV website. So what that means is that they offer a $2,500 rebate for a battery electric vehicle, again, a purely electric vehicle, or a $1,500 rebate for a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. But there are some stipulations. So for the plug-in hybrid vehicle, the electric range of the vehicle has to be at least 25 miles or more of range to be considered for the state rebate. The vehicle purchase price must also be below $50,000 for either a battery electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. Something that's not on the presentation, but that I will stress, is that you have to apply on More EV's website within 3 months of purchase of your vehicle in order to qualify for the rebate. So make sure you check out their website if you're considering buying an electric vehicle or leasing one, because it applies for leases too. But make sure that you know your way around the website. One thing I did forget to mention about the federal tax credit is that it is kind of for purchases and leases. So it's definitely for purchases, but for leases, it's up to the individual dealership whether or not they want to roll that $7,500 tax credit into the price of the vehicle. Most dealerships do because they want to remain competitive, but it is definitely up to them. So make sure you think about that when you're just deciding whether or not you want to purchase or lease, or if you're just talking to the dealership in general. That's a question you might want to consider asking. And then there are Drive Green discounts, or there were. So pre-pandemic, we had a very robust program where we would be able to offer discounts for folks who signed up on our website to test drive a vehicle with one of our affiliated dealerships. Unfortunately, like I talked about before, inventory levels have just been abysmal. And so dealerships are trying to keep ordering and ordering cars, but most of those cars on order are already spoken for. So there's really not much they can do as far as discounts go. But we can help you to pre-order a vehicle and start that conversation with the dealership. Again, there's no discount, but we still can help you facilitate that purchase or lease if you'd like to. Give me 1 second and I will show you what the website looks like. Okay, so here we are on the Green Energy Consumers Drive Green website. It looks great, I know. Thanks for checking it out with me. So there's 3 main tabs that you'll want to look at. There's Learn More, Find New or Use, or Get Involved. So I'll just take you briefly through them all. So Get Involved, there are lots of fun things you could click on here. So there's a Take the Pledge. We know not everybody is ready to get an electric vehicle at this moment, but if you take the pledge that your next car will be electric, we can keep you in the loop with our newsletter of all like important things EV. Again, then we have our subscribe to our newsletter. So you can subscribe just to our newsletter, just so you can keep in touch and know about fun EV facts. You can join us at an event in any way you want, whether that be online or in person when we do those again in the summer. You can come an EV ambassador, and what that means is you're an EV owner who volunteers to help us out with webinars, whether you'd like to be panelists or to just come to events and bring your car to talk about your car, that sort of thing. And then you can also join our Drive Green community group on Facebook, which is a really fun, supportive way for people to learn more about EVs. So it's for people who are very fresh to EVs and also for people who are experienced owners. It's a really fun group. And if you go to learn more, you'll see a lot of the things we talked about today. So we have introduction to EVs, we have charging and driving. I'm already subscribed to the newsletter. We'll have the environment and health thing, talking points. We'll have costs and rebates, and we'll tell you a little bit about pre-owned EVs. And then finally, if you come to this part of the website, you can look at our electric car shopping tool. You can compare the cars. Now, what's important here is that we have 2 options. We have new and pre-owned. For pre-owned, it's a little bit different because instead of offering a way for you to buy these cars, that model didn't really work for the pre-owned market, we found after about a 2-year experiment. But what we have done is kind of compiled a list of like what those cars should cost at those certain model years, and just kind of giving you some fast facts about those cars. So if you're interested in a used EV and you just kind of want some just basic information, I would encourage you to come here. Now you can also come to our new portal, and you'll see on the left-hand side we have lots of things that you can filter by, whether it's battery electric vehicle, a plug-in hybrid, or a plug-in hybrid, the electric range, and the MSRP, so on and so forth. All of these cars have their own specific card, so to speak, where it gives you fast facts. So it'll tell you like the base MSRP, what it's the federal tax credit, if it's eligible for it, if there's a rebate, that sort of thing. And then it'll tell you important things like the range, which I think everybody is really excited to know, or potentially the drive of the vehicle. So what you would then do, if you want to pre-order the car, because you want to get your hands on this sooner rather than later, you would hit select car, go here. It'll tell you all the different trim levels you can possibly pick from. So just pick 2 that we like. And then it'll show you the different dealers we have on offer and where they're located. And then we get to this final screen where you put in all your information. So what will happen here excuse me, is all of your information will then go to the dealer so they can contact you. But then they also, you also get their information. So if you want to start this discussion with them right away, you can definitely do that, because you will be sent an automated email with all of their contact information so you can get this process started. And you might not get the car right away because, again, the pre-orders are active, but it'll take you less time as if you didn't use the car tool. Okay, just going to go back to the PowerPoint. We just talked about that, and then that's it for me. Now we have tons of time for questions, so definitely get those in there if you're interested. Let's see. Okay. Someone asked, is there any financial compensation to us for brokering the cars? So kind of what happens is we only get a commission if a car actually gets purchased or leased, and it's only $100 per car. So the idea here is that we're not making a ton of money. We're just like making in like a little bit of a commission, because we are a nonprofit. So we just, it's just accountability, really. Hold on. One question is, are there residential electricity discounts / rebates available in Massachusetts? There used to be for National Grid customers. I don't know if that is the same right now, but I would encourage you, if you're in Massachusetts, to check out National Grid and Eversource or Eversource's websites, depending upon where you live, to see if they have an eligible, a discount available. I don't think that there are any discount and rebates available right now, though. Another question is, can unused tax credit be carried forward? You can only, no, you have to file in your next year's taxes. That's it. Let's see. And then one is, can you say a bit more about vehicle safety standards and crash tests in EVs? So EVs are very safe. One thing I will say is that they have a lower center of gravity because their batteries, which are very heavy, are located on the bottom of the vehicle, so they're less likely to like roll over. And then they have all the typical normal safety standards that you would find in an internal combustion engine vehicle. I would suggest that you go to the IIHS website to see, like, if there are particular cars that you're looking at, to see what the safety ratings are on those. I won't ignore the fact that there are some recalls out right now for the Hyundai Kona and also the Chevy Bolt. The Chevy Bolt has been on a stop sale / recall for over 6 months, I believe now, because there was issues with like fires with the batteries, and so they have since fixed those issues and are in the process of recalling all the vehicles that had that problem and replacing the batteries. Someone asks if there are any incentives in Florida. I'm sorry, I don't live in Florida. I don't believe there are any, but I would encourage you to check it out. Another person has a question about, how does cold weather impact charging time and mileage? Well, let me just tell you, we just had a webinar about winter driving a couple weeks ago, and I can send that out to you. But the long story short is, it does impact the charging time and the range. of your vehicle, but that is kind of typical with your internal combustion engine vehicles as well. Your range will decrease. It does decrease a little bit more in electric vehicles, I'm not going to lie to you. But we do have like tips and tricks on our website and in that presentation, which I can send around, that helps mitigate that. But basically, you want to make sure that you buy a car that has at least double the range of what your normal commute and errands are. You guys are asking a ton of great questions. There is a question about the status of charging station availability, and I think that was in reference to me talking about the PlugShare website. So basically, because it's crowdsourced, people will just tell you whatever they want to tell you about the charging station. So they'll tell you like if the station is usually iced out, and what that means is it's a term that EV owners use that say when someone who owns a gas-powered car parks in an electric vehicle charging station spot. So that's not great. So they'll tell you things like that. They'll also tell you things like if there's like usually like a long wait or if it's like a heavily used charging station. So you'll see that as well. Okay, we have a comment. It says, seems like a PEV purchase now is not smart if PEVs are going to surge soon and if charging stations are also going to surge. So the battery electric vehicles that are on the market now are fantastic. The range is great, more than you need for your typical just your typical day-to-day life, I would believe. I know plenty of people who are on the road for their jobs and have battery electric vehicles, and so it really is doable. What I do suggest to people, because the technology keeps getting better and better, is to lease if you have the option to do so, because if you're one of those people who wants the newest and best thing, it's really fun. Otherwise, I do think buying a BEV is a good option. But yeah, if you're not ready for it, if you want a plug-in hybrid, go for it. I personally want a RAV4 Prime when the prices are a little bit lower. Let's see. Okay, with so much innovation and improvement in range and performance year over year, is it better to lease versus buy an EV in 2022? I kind of answered that. You can lease. It is kind of fun to see what's coming out. But if you prefer to buy, if that's like your normal mode of getting a car, you should definitely buy. You can do that with plenty of range and cool features now. But it really is up to your personal preference. Why do I like the RAV4 Prime? Because I drive a small car right now, and I really want all of the space. And I'm not sure where I'm going to be living, whether it be like in a house or an apartment in the next few years. So it just seems like a plug-in hybrid would be the best option for me. Plus, I like to do like a lot of hiking and stuff, and so the RAV4 Prime has the clearance that I'd be looking for. So that's generally why. Oh, also, and it has 40 miles of electric range, which is just fantastic for a plug-in hybrid. Is there an advantage to waiting a year for better models? If you are in a situation where you can wait a year for a car, I would suggest it now, not necessarily just for like in general better models, but because of the pandemic and all the chip shortages and the inventory shortages, there are going to be a lot of better cars, not necessarily better, but a lot more options coming out within the next year as a lot of that stuff, like the inventory shortages, wane. And so if you're looking for something in particular, you'll probably find it within the next year. Also, like I mentioned before about the federal tax credit potentially going to a federal rebate, that might be something to consider because it'll lessen the price of the vehicle overall. One question is, do you know if small to medium cities are on board with installing charging stations? I don't know on a case-by-case basis, but I do know there's a lot of involvement with the utility more than there are with cities um, to actually like spur the infrastructure, to be built. And a lot of the time, there are programs that the utility runs that cities might apply for to get charging stations for their cities. A question is trunk space more limited with a battery electric vehicle? Not really. No, because the battery is typically like at the bottom of the car where you place your feet on top of it. I know the trunk space isn't really limited. Some cars that are battery electrics actually have what they call a frunk, which is like a front trunk, in addition to their regular trunk. But it will vary from car to car, like anything else. So I would just encourage you to look at it. Um, one of the EV owners that I talk to a lot, he has a Nissan Leaf, and I just love it. And it has so much trunk space, and I'm so envious of it. And one of our coworkers, she has one as well, and she has twins, and they cart everything around in that Nissan Leaf, and it's just a hatchback. Any more questions? They've been great so far.
Hello, I'm Irene Camarano. I am a resident of Sterling, and I have been since 1940. So I've seen things come and go in Sterling. I have been asked to come to the Electric Light Department to tell you people about the battery system. It's absolutely phenomenal to think that we are saving $400,000 a year.
The town of Sterling, Massachusetts, population 8,000, is best known as the birthplace of the beloved nursery rhyme Mary Had a Little Lamb. But recently, it has garnered some serious international attention for its commitment to community resiliency and clean energy.
We were #1 in the country for solar watts per customer. That was a huge pride moment for us. You could see on certain days when the thunderstorms or the snow cover that there were some issues during peaking periods that the solar wasn't available. It actually would hurt us because it's there during the day but disappears during other times. The cost of capacity was going up. Our transmission costs were going up from 2010 to 2017. They've gone from $500,000 to $1.2 million. We learned very quickly that we had to do something different. We need some security for that solar. We started looking for alternatives.
It's a great technology. There's no cost for fuel, there's no emissions, it's local. But the drawback is you can't flip a switch and turn on your solar panels. And the way to do that is to put battery in between the solar and the grid.
Utilities like Sterling Municipal Light Department purchase electric services, like capacity and transmission, from ISO New England and their regional network service provider. Prices can fluctuate greatly depending on supply and demand in the regional market. When electricity demand is at its peak, prices for electricity and electric services are highest. By installing a battery system, a municipal utility like Sterling can start to control how and when it buys electric services from the ISO. This is important because reducing purchases during times of regional peak demand will save money for the utility and its ratepayers.
Battery storage in the next 10 to 15 years is going to be almost a mandatory thing to have. It's an absolute no-brainer to put this type of a system in place now to protect yourself against the rising cost of capacity.
Batteries can be used to reduce your bills. They can be used to avoid other dirtier technologies from powering your home or your business.
What we're looking at right here is a battery rack. An energy storage rack is about 100 kilowatts, 100 kilowatt hours. Each individual module has monitoring and controls, safety being first and foremost.
At this point, we know it works. What we're demonstrating now is not the technology, it's the economics.
This project represents the next steps forward in ensuring Massachusetts has a clean, affordable, resilient energy future. And we're pleased to have awarded $1.46 million in grant to the Sterling Municipal Light Department.
We were very fortunate to get this Community Clean Energy Resiliency Initiative grant from the Department of Energy Resources for Massachusetts. Now we had the money, we had an idea, and we had to put it into play and work with the Clean Energy States Alliance, Sandia National Labs, Department of Energy with So
the storage is a natural partner of renewable energy because it changes the renewable energy into something that is dispatchable, that is predictable.
And so for the first time in the electric field, this is after 120 years, you're really seeing the potential for kind of a system change.
If you use energy storage to curtail the spike of your own city's demand for electricity at certain points, you can save thousands of dollars.
Sterling uses its battery system to store low-cost electricity by charging the batteries with local solar power during the day, or by purchasing cheap power from the grid during low demand times, such as during the night. Then, at times of regional peak demand, Sterling releases or discharges stored electricity from the batteries, so it doesn't have to buy as much electricity when grid power is most expensive. This reduces the cost of electricity for the ratepayers, and it also reduces Sterling's transmission and capacity payments to the grid operator. These payments are calculated based on the amount of power that Sterling purchases during peak pricing periods for each month and each year. Reducing purchases of electricity during peak pricing saves hundreds of thousands of dollars per year for Sterling's ratepayers.
Annual savings I think we get from the batteries we expect to be almost to $400,000. And that's on the conservative side. Without the grant, the payback period for this project would be about 7 years. With the grant, we look at the payback period about 2.5 years.
There are monetized and unmonetized benefits. Resiliency is a benefit that is more difficult to monetize, but equally important.
We had a major ice storm in town, so we had customers out as far as 2 weeks. Most of them were out at least a week. Central Mass was in pretty tough shape that time.
When you have cities and towns without power for 14 days before Christmas and you see kids in shelters saying, I just wish we had electricity, you always want to make sure we have enough power. You want to make sure there's enough energy in a time of crisis.
Storage is very reliable. You want to provide reliability to the police and the dispatch center.
The Sterling battery storage system is designed to power the town's police station and dispatch center for about 2 weeks in the event of a grid outage or disaster. With the local solar array, the batteries can power the town's police station even longer by recharging the batteries with solar, meaning Sterling's first responders will be able to help people in need if a natural disaster knocks out the grid.
We don't know when the next superstorm Sandy's coming or the next ice storm's coming, but we know now we're prepared.
And we're a small police department. If another occasion like an ice storm were to happen, I think large agencies would not be prepared as the little town of Sterling is.
We're now looking at grid-scale types of battery storage that are enabling whole communities to be able to power critical resources from batteries when the grid goes down. And at the same time, we can reduce what our current technologies are costing us in terms of not only a price tag, but also in terms of environmental quality.
We were looking at bringing natural gas in, building peaker plants right here in town. Then this opportunity came along, and that got pushed to the side completely.
We need municipalities to be leading by example. We need them to be the torchbearers of these new technologies, to show their residents and businesses that this works and these are the benefits.
Energy storage is the critical piece of the puzzle to ensuring a clean, green, cost-efficient, and reliable energy source. What is happening in Sterling is giving us a glimpse of the future. And this future is not that far off if we get the right policies in place.
I see it as a natural occurrence. Energy storage is a game changer. It will change everything from the way electricity is purchased to the way it is used by consumers.
We've had probably 8 or 9 municipal light plants already come to look at this project, continuing from other countries, from Taiwan, Japan, Germany.
Everybody's eyes are on us.
Yeah, people are coming looking at us. We're proud to get it done.
It takes everyone. It takes the office staff, the operations crew, the board. They're sharp guys and they're good workers, and they took it. There was a certain pride knowing that they're pioneers.
The town of Sterling takes care of us, and if someone is going to help you in a disaster, you have a good feeling. You're not alone.
I think working for a public utility is a way of life. It's weekends, it's watching thunderstorms, it's watching snowstorms. Anyone that's in this industry understands that. We're owned by the people we serve.
Sterling is the first town to install a grid-scale battery system in Massachusetts, but it won't be the last. Already other municipalities are planning similar projects. Energy storage is economical, fast to install, and it works. If you would like to learn more about how energy storage can benefit your community, visit www.resilient-power.org or sign up to receive more information at the bit.ly link shown on the screen.
On your left, the old guard, the internal combustion engine, better known as ICE. On your right, the newcomer, the electric vehicle, aka EV. Take a seat. At first glance, you may not notice the differences. Start button, check. Steering wheel, check. Turn signal, check. Whoa, wait a minute. Where's the exhaust pipe? It isn't there. The EV doesn't burn fossil fuel, and it's quiet. The engine is powered by an electric battery that barely makes a sound. That battery can be charged many ways. At home, or on the road, at a charging station. And the battery even recharges when you put your foot on the brakes or take your foot off the accelerator. The advantages for the EV pile up. It's cheaper to maintain and fuel, saving owners as much as $10,000 over the life of the car. With no tailpipe emissions, it's way cleaner. That means less smog and less asthma. And the EV is a green machine. It produces less carbon dioxide than a diesel or gas-powered car. CO2 even drops to zero if the electricity comes from renewable sources like wind and solar. No doubt about it, the electric vehicle is a superhero for you and for the planet.
% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions are caused by extracting and burning fossil fuels, which, despite its clean-sounding name, includes natural gas.
Oil and gas has done a marvelous job of taking a fossil fuel, which is methane, and calling it natural gas, and that goes into our homes.
While a lot of us think of how outdoor pollution affects things like asthma in children, a lot of people don't realize that burning gas indoors, whether it's through a stove or through a gas burning furnace, can also have effects on your asthma. A lot of times the level of particulates or pollution inside a house can be higher than outside.
The burning of gas in your home, in a stove for example, open flame to the air, allows nitrogen dioxide and some level of carbon monoxide to accumulate in the home.
The carbon monoxide that is produced by, with gas appliances is the same toxin that comes out of the tailpipe of a gas car or a diesel car. We don't want to breathe that in, so why would we bring that into our house?
There are alternatives to burning fossil fuels in your home. Modern technology has made using electricity to cook with induction stoves, heat water, or heat and cool your entire home with heat pumps as affordable as gas. And with an all-electric home, there's no need for carbon monoxide detectors. Colorado law HB 20-1155B requires home builders to offer new home buyers the opportunity to have an efficient electrical heating system, including an electric water heater, electric boiler, or electric furnace or heat pump system.
Having gas in homes has both direct health impacts by the substances that are released into the indoor home environment, as well as more indirect health impacts of contributing to climate change over time.
Gas is dangerous and a known health impediment. If you are in a position to effect change, encouraging the use of electric cooking appliances, electric water heaters, electric dryers, and electric heating and cooling systems can potentially save someone's life and the Earth.